this astaxanthin supplement, I hear it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 100 times stronger than vitamin E, and 800 times stronger than CoQ10?
Yes, astaxanthin supports joint health, memory health, even anti-aging and immune health. This Hawaiʻi brand delivers 3 times more nature-identical astaxanthin to your body and is a better buy than the competition. It's called Xanthicin. Safely manage your inflammatory health with Xanthicin. It's pure and highly absorbed, providing greater benefits. Visit getxantho.com and these retailers.
All right, everybody, how's it going? Episode 21. Is it 21? Are we on 22? I've lost count at this point. Of Hawaii football. Now, yeah, 22, I believe, is where we are at. The last 3 weeks have seemed like a year when it comes to the University of Hawaii football, but we are back for another episode of Hawaii Football Now, presented by Xanthicin. A big mahalo also to our sponsor, Spectrum Mobile, in addition to our good buddies over at Xanthicin. Jordan Helle, Hunter Hughes back with you, and my word, what a whirlwind it has been, Hunter. I mean, the last month, 2 months, the last 9 days, the last 2 weeks, like, it has been insane, just absolutely insane. We have a new football coach, the 25th in program history. It is Timmy Chang, a very familiar name to folks in Hawaii, Hawaii football fans, fans of the University of Hawaii, and just general football fans of the 808 will know that name very, very well. We will get into that here in just a second. But an opening drive topic that I wanted to kind of ask you about, Hunter, before we dive into the coaching change, the hire, the week that was just absolute insanity after we thought it was going to quiet down a little bit. And I kind of wanted to start with this because this sort of sprung up prior to the hiring of Timmy Chang. It has seemingly been adopted by the new head football coach at the University of Hawaii. It has been adopted sort of by the university, but this hashtag brotherhood, BRADDAH, right? Not brotherhood, which we have seen, and nothing against that, but the very local pigeon brotherhood. What do you make of this, Hunter? It sort of sprung up in the interim, if you will, in the purgatory that the school, the university, and quite honestly, the players found themselves in when Todd Graham resigned and when it was very much in question as to who the next head coach was going to be. These were a group of players without direction, right? I know Jacob Yoro was the interim head coach, but I don't know how many people really saw maybe Yoro becoming the full-time head coach or anything like that. So for all intents and purposes, that, you know, this was a program that was looking for a leader, and the players kind of stepped up. They kind of sort of organically born this hashtag brotherhood. And as a guy who was part of this brotherhood, and I would say still is, as an alum, as somebody who came through this program, who played for this program, who still deeply cares for this program, your thoughts on the hashtag and social media. Sometimes it's the worst, but sometimes it can do some good too.
This was awesome, Jordan. In my opinion, other than those 2 wins at the end of our season, this was one of the brightest things that I've seen in the last couple months for University of Hawaii football. So many of our guys have left, and the guys that have either chosen to stay or don't really have the option of going elsewhere, you know, with their playing career, with, you know, situational happenings for them as student athletes. It was cool to see kind of this this independent unity with the guys. I talked with a couple of them as they were putting together their pictures to be a part of this brotherhood thing. For those of you that didn't see this or know what we're talking about, it was kind of a trend, if you will, specifically just for University of Hawaii football players that are currently on the roster, that it was almost like their way of saying Hawaii is home. We are banding together right now. Nothing's going to tear us apart, regardless of who our next coach is. It's about us. It's about our family. It's about Hawaii in general. it's everything you want to see as an alumni, that family coming together. And Jordan, I mean, you were a football player. Families always make the best football teams. They're always the most unified. The relationships between players is always the strongest, and it always, in my opinion, the family environments that I've been around have always translated to the field as well. So proud to see something like that.
Yeah, I think just quickly from my standpoint,
Yeah.
I think the fact that it came about without, right, like, nothing against, the TTH of Todd Graham, or
Yeah.
even like, hey, the Pride Rock of Nick
Rolo.
Rolovich, right? Those were sort of attached to an individual, right?
Yep.
Those were sort of attached to a head figure or a figurehead of the program. Like this was a little more organic. And I'm not saying that some of those other, catchphrases or mottos weren't worthwhile or didn't capture. But this is kind of cool because it was a development of the guys, and something that showed a lot of the commitment of those guys, and you saw in sort of statements put out and in comments made, whether on social media or to the mainstream media, by a lot of these guys who are still part of the program. They talked about it being much bigger than just an individual head coach, being bigger than an individual, being part of the program, representing the university, representing the state. And I think it also sort of set the tone. It's like, hey, the guys have spoken, right?
Yes.
And so the next head coach has to also sort of embrace that, right? It's got to be bigger than an individual. And that kind of leads us into, I think, the conversation around Timmy Chang, one of the all-time winningest quarterbacks in the history of college football, without a doubt, in the history of the University of Hawaii. Record holder at times throughout his career. This dude was sort of a monumental signing when he came out of St. Louis school, and was one of the true big time recruits that turned down greener pastures, if you will, bigger time offers to stay home, to stay at the University of Hawaii. Was a huge monumental piece of June Jones's early teams that really helped turn the tide and transition out of those moribund years in the late 90s. And these are all things that University of Hawaii football fans don't need reminding of, right? This is a guy who is entrenched in the history of the University of Hawaii, particularly that modern era, which I think a lot of people point to 1999 as the start of, whether it was the black being integrated into the uniform, the green H, logo, whether it was the run and shoot attack, like all of those things. Timmy was there more or less at the beginning. I know he wasn't the guy right there in 1999, but they didn't quite go to that new logo until a couple of years in either of that June Jones era. He is the 25th head coach, as we mentioned, in program history. In some comments shortly after being hired, he said, quote, "I'm back. I'm home. In my heart, I've never left. Like I've always done, I'm ready to give my all for Hawaii. The highest privilege in coaching is the right to represent an institution as head coach. This is beyond indescribable. I get to do it here in Hawaii, where I am from. I am so proud to represent my school and state. I am honored to lead the Brotherhood." And so he mentioned, the hashtag that had been swirling around. But Hunter, just sort of your initial reactions. We got a whole lot more to talk about when it came to how we got to that point where Timmy was announced as the head coach on Saturday afternoon. But your thoughts on the hire of Timmy Chang as the guy to lead this program going forward and come out what is, I think, without saying, a very tumultuous period in the history of this program.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan of it. People would ask me, this last week, who do you think is going to happen? If June Jones doesn't get it, who do you think? And I immediately bumped Timmy to the top of that list for me. You need someone with some pizzazz right now with the state of where Hawaii football is. It gets some buzz back to the program, for the general public, for the guys on the team too. He's a legend. Just speaking as a Holly boy from the mainland, I didn't grow up knowing who Timmy Chang was. I heard about the record this guy over in Hawaii threw for a ton. So I knew a little bit about that as I was growing up. But as I was a player, there's a big old picture of him in the office, and then right underneath it, NCAA all-time yards leader, at the time. And you see that, and you look at that number as a quarterback, a part of this brotherhood, and you're like, dang, that dude was a stud. He was a slinger. So as a quarterback, he's other than uh, Colt Brennan, he's the guy in our minds as Hawaii football players and quarterbacks. So definitely get some pizzazz going right there. But then too, I like this move for a few reasons. He's never been a head coach before. Potentially, it could be beneficial for Hawaii athletics, who always seems to make an excuse that we don't have enough money to keep a good coach here. We could probably, I don't know the extent of his contract, Jordan, but we probably are able to get him on sale, if you will, from maybe some other guys. And then also with a guy like Timmy, who has, a big family, has crazy connections out here in Hawaii. We could, I'm going to prophesy for a second. I grew up in church, that we could potentially have a long-term coach here. I would love if Timmy was our coach for the next 10 years, that was invested in in getting his hands dirty, what we've talked about before, the infrastructure, and getting this program back on its feet, and helping Hawaii football become what it could have been in its heyday, that we've seemed to just hand off to another coach every 3 to 4 years. We need to get out of that model, Jordan. And I would love if Timmy Chang could be that guy to break the mold.
And he's young too, right? He's only
Totally.
40 years old, and a guy that seemingly could perhaps be in that position for a long time. And obviously, we're a long way from that, right? These first few years are going to be critical. I mean, he's got to hit the road running when it comes to signing day, in basically less than 2 weeks' time. It's going to be really interesting and really pivotal to see how he can kind of pull things together this year with the guys that are remaining on the roster, which I think still has, a fair amount of talent. And if you can surround those guys with some nice incoming pieces, that could go a long way. David Matlin, in his statement after the hiring of Timmy Chang, said, quote, "I am excited to welcome back legendary quarterback Timmy Chang to Manoa. Timmy made a name for himself throwing the football as a young quarterback and has continued his legacy in the collegiate coaching ranks over the past decade. The time has come for him to take over the program that developed him into the coach, father, husband, and leader he is today." You mentioned some of those passing records, right? Once held the NCAA passing and total offense records, I should say. 117 total career TDs in his time, throwing it around at Aloha Stadium. Had stints, mainly practice squads with the Arizona Cardinals, the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, played in NFL Europe, in the CFL as well. As that took a few years, right? He was kind of chasing the professional dream for a while, and then got into coaching as a grad assistant in 2012 and 13 under June Jones at SMU, right? So a little bit of crossover there. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for a couple of seasons at Jackson State, which of course is all the buzz now with Deion Sanders and the recruits that he is pulling in. The SWAC school. Spent a couple of years, actually just 1 year, as the offensive coordinator calling plays at Division II Emory and Henry, and then made the transition back to Division I in the FCS, with the last 5 seasons basically in Nevada. Was the inside receivers coach, then moved over to tight ends, and then was the full receivers coach the last couple of years under Jay Norvell. So basically coaching some form of pass catcher the last 5 years there. Was going to move over with Jay Norvell to the Colorado State staff, or as after he took the Colorado State job after this 2021 season, but now he is hired away by the University of Hawaii. And so you touched on it a little bit, Hunter, and with your background, especially, right, in the quarterback room, working so closely with guys, the quarterback coach, with play callers, with the offensive coordinators, whatever that looks like. So often the model in coaching is I work my way up, right? It is a very sort of a linear path to a head coaching job, whether you start as a graduate assistant, an analyst, then you get a position coaching job, then maybe you get to a fuller position coaching job, right? We talk about Timmy Chang. He was an inside receivers coach, then he became the receivers coach. And so sometimes it's as specialized as that, then you move to a position, you move to a position group, and then maybe you work your way up to coordinator, right? Sometimes it's I'm run game coordinator. Then you work your way up to offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. And then it's usually a guy who has been a coordinator who gets the job as head coach, right? A Norm Chow, a Nick Rolovich, guys who were coordinators for a while. Timmy's never been a coordinator at the FCS level, but we do mention, right? Obviously, he has been a coordinator calling plays for a time at Jackson State, FCS level. He has not been a play caller coordinator at the FBS level, I should say, the highest of levels, but has done it at the FCS level, at the Division II level as well. And that is usually the path. I got my thoughts on it, but is that a big concern? Would you have rather seen a guy who has been a coordinator at this level of football? That always seems to be the template. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the be all end all that it has to be that way. But what are your thoughts on that, Hunter?
I know we'll jump into this, later, obviously, with this show, everything that happened with June. It felt like UH kind of handcuffed themselves with this and just were like, okay, I guess we'll go with Timmy Chang now. That's my perception. I feel like we ought to give him a shot. First and foremost, it's Timmy Chang. That right then and there is going to be one of the strongest recruiting lines to keep some of Hawaii's talent here in the islands. I mean, we've always said that's one of the main issues with Hawaii football is losing our talent out of state. So first and foremost, we needed to fix that check. From a play calling perspective, I think, he was born and raised in the run and shoot, played in the run and shoot, coached under June Jones in the run and shoot. In my mind, I think he will be able to do that here. And in terms of, what you were saying about a linear path, to coaching, Rolo was never a head coach before he took his job here. Yeah, he was an offensive coordinator, but there was a lot of doubt behind him too. Like, was he going to be ready? Were we willing to take a risk on him? And it turned out fantastic for those 4 years whenever he was here for us. Coaching is, in my opinion, and Belichick has even said this, it's way more who you know than what you know. I mean, we just saw that with Todd Graham's son being the offensive coordinator. Anybody that knows football knows he may or may not have been qualified for that position. So in college football, definitely at the lower levels too, your best friend could become the head coach and you are an offensive coordinator the next day. And I think some of that, instead of looking at it for its negatives, I look at it for its positives. Timmy Chang can make that jump from wide receiver, coach at Colorado State to Hawaii head coach because he's a legend. And will he be a good head coach? Will he be a leader, someone that can relate to guys, and then inspire them to run through a brick wall for them? I don't know. I've personally never met the guy. I've only ever heard good things from previous teammates of his that were coaches of mine, as well as other mentors out there like Sean Withy Allen. I've heard great things about Coach Chang. So everything's positive from my end, Jordan. And Hawaii needs a huge scoop of positivity with everything we've just gone through. So I'm keeping that in the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think too often teams get so fixated on he's got to be a previous head coach or he's got to be a coordinator. And I think they overlook candidates sometimes. And I don't know how Timmy's going to do, right? Your guess is as good as mine. I wish him all the success in the world, and I hope he gets the support he needs, both institutionally and from the fan base. But I think it's so overrated that guys, get docked because they haven't been coordinators and thus they can't be head coaches yet. Like it's a big responsibility, no doubt. But that doesn't mean guys can't be leaders, right? Like you have leadership qualities or you don't. You have the ability to have vision or not, right? You have to be a guy who sees the big picture, who can piece the puzzle together, who can put it all together, right? It's so much more than just X's and O's. It's so much more than just on the field. Like these guys have to be ready to go. So it's really going to be an interesting situation. Who do you think, or offensively, how important is it? Run and shoot, not run and shoot. He's coached in different systems for sure.
Uh, that I think that just goes to a preference thing. I think you and I are definitely Hawaii football loyalists per se, and more leaning on the side of modern Hawaii football loyalists. In my mind, run and shoot is just who Hawaii football is. I was I'm a big proponent of what Rolo did, bringing it back from those kind of pro style days of Norm Chow. And then for us to kind of go back from that again, it's like, come on, Hawaii, make up your mind. And so I think a lot of that will have to do with maybe the supporting cast he puts around him, because it's kind of a finite number of coaches out there that have either played in the run and shoot or understand it, that they could teach it to our guys. So not necessarily only with Hawaii football, but it's kind of a unique brand of offensive play calling that you have to, in a sense, have experience playing in.
I think that's a great point, right? It really is. You need coaches who can teach it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a hard offense, and it's a unique offense to kind of get into, right? And that's why Nick Rolovich, when he brought it back in, right, having guys like Brian Smith and Craig Stutzman to be, teachers along with him. That's why I'm immensely curious.
Yeah.
Who's going to be on his staff? Like who is he going to be able to hire? The other part about it that's working against Timmy, obviously, is how late in the cycle everything is, right? And so who are you plucking away from other schools? Who are you going to be able to convince to come join you, right? Is it going to have to be a similar situation where like Hawaii went and got a wide receivers coach to come in, because that's a couple of steps up the ladder, if you will. And so will Timmy have to go find guys that are a little more under the radar, right? Maybe taking chances on some guys without the kind of experience that you would typically find in positions there, right? I mean, Todd Graham ran into a lot of those similar issues, to be fair, to the previous coaching staff. Like, it was tough, just the way that when he came into the cycle, all of a sudden you get behind the eight ball, and you're hiring first year kind of coaches and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it really is interesting. And that's why, and we record this on Monday night. Tomorrow's supposed to be a press conference, right, with Coach Chang, with the athletic administration. We haven't heard a ton of who is going to be on his staff at this point. I know, guys like Abe Elamimian are still out there recruiting, if I'm not mistaken. So some of the current staff, I'd imagine there will be a fair amount of holdovers when you look at guys like him and Yoro, Kim McLeod, potentially guys, Hawaii guys, if you will, either from here or having played at the University of Hawaii, and maybe some other guys on that staff as well, from the previous staff, I should say. And so that is a huge priority. And you sort of touched on some others, Hunter, but what would you like to see prioritized from Coach Chang before we take the halftime break here, over the next couple of weeks, the next month, the first season? But what needs to be sort of on the top of the checklist, if you will, as he starts his tenure?
First and foremost, connection with the team, which I got to applaud. He's connected on social media. He's in that world. I saw him posting earlier on Twitter with the hashtag Brotherhood. He is trying to, win the affections of the guys, which I'm a huge fan of. Meet them where they're at. We're in 2022. The college athlete is on social media. And if you want to win the favor of the guys, their support, their loyalty, that will then yield dividends on the football field, you got to start there, even if you haven't had a chance to meet them in person yet. So you got to get going with that, because Jordan, we're January 24th today. It's this will air on the 26th or the 27th. Spring ball is only 2 months away. We not only need to figure out who the assistant coaches are going to be, but then a lot of that will be kind of established and figured out in this process. And I think just this past week, Hawaii football was supposed to hold open tryouts. I need to do a little bit more digging to see what exactly went down with that, because what supporting coaches are there to run that tryout. It's always interesting what happens in a coaching transition, but I think first and foremost, support of the team is paramount. And then from there, I'm really interested to see what what happens in this press conference, because then comes the support of the local community. We've all but completely ruined that in this last year, and so that's a very close second in my mind.
Yeah, I think all of those are, utmost importance as this thing moves forward. All right, so we'll take a halftime break here. We'll come in and talk a little bit about how this sort of all unraveled. Last week was just insane. And I know I keep saying that when it comes to this University of Hawaii offseason. But last week might have been the most drama-filled. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think it might have been the coup de grace. So we'll take a quick break, come back, and get you going in the second half before we head out of here on episode 22. Crazy to think about it. But of course, before we get there, we got to tell you about our good friends over at Xanthicin, the only brand that delivers 3 times more astaxanthin than the competition. Astaxanthin helps with joint and muscle function, with cholesterol and cognitive health. Astaxanthin is even recommended by doctors and pharmacists for its anti-aging qualities. You can find Xanthicin at getxantho.com, Newtown Square Pharmacy, Down to Earth Kaka'ako, and PharmaCare Hawaii as well. Again, check out getxantho.com to learn more. That's getxantho.com to learn more. Second half coming up.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half time here on Hawaii Football Now. Jordan Hunter back with you. We talked extensively about the new hire. Timmy Chang is the 25th football coach in the history of this University of Hawaii football program. But it was quite the winding road, roller coaster, serpentine path to get to that point Saturday afternoon. I mean, you had a large public groundswell of support for former head coach June Jones, right? We talked about it on the podcast last week. It seemed like he was the odds-on favorite. Like if Vegas was putting out odds, he would have been the betting favorite, no doubt about it. There was a vocal group who very much would have been on board with that, who was pushing for it. You had June come out early last week and basically say publicly that he was interested in the job. You had Rich Miano, who was also rumored to be interested in the job, make a public declaration that he was not going to apply, or that he was going to withdraw his application if he had already put it in, and instead was going to throw his support behind June Jones. This was early last week as well. I think it was Tuesday of last week. The other interesting part about all of this is those guys were very much involved with the Polynesian Bowl. Rich is always a central figure in that, and June Jones is one of the head coaches for one of the teams, and so these guys were readily available for like comments and interviews with the media because of all that went around with the week leading up to the Polynesian Bowl and the natural media coverage that draws. And then it got down to Friday afternoon, and it seemed like that still was going to be the case. Word was that June Jones was interviewing for the job via Zoom, I think it was, with athletic director David Matlin, some of the high-ranking decision makers at the University of Hawaii. And then like less than a 24-hour window of just absolute chaos at the end of last week. Like these Friday deals that kept coming down, right? Whether it was the resignation of Todd Graham came down at like 7:00 on a Friday. And then Friday afternoon after that, it was reported that June Jones had declined the University of Hawaii's offer. And I think a lot of people kind of looked at their phones and were left saying, huh? Like what's going on? Like, how did this happen? Just earlier in the week, June said he wanted the job. And then you're like, wait, so how did we get to that point? Right. And then the details start coming out, and June went very public with things. His agent Lee Steinberg went very public with things. It was reported the initial offer was 2 years without full control of hiring his own staff, which is not normal. Like that's not how things work in college football. Like not even like lower level college football are guys taking 2-year deals without hiring control over their staff. Like this made national news in part, to be fair, because June Jones and his agent Lee Steinberg went very public with it, right? And put things out on social media, statements, did interviews with local media, with national media, like that. Sure. Word is the offer was up to 3 years. June wanted 5, and this is June's own words, right? He said he wanted 5 with no buyout clause, basically saying that he could have been fired at any time. And so 2 years, 200 years, it didn't really matter. Like they could have fired him a month in. But there are a lot of things that come with signing a 5-year contract. And a lot of that is stability that you can show your recruits that you're going to be there, conceivably going down. Word is June Jones wanted control over marketing, very similar to what he had in terms of power the first go around when he was the head coach, and thus became a very public battle between June Jones, his supporters, that camp, and the University of Hawaii. And so we had thought we had moved on from sort of this public PR battle between like a vocal contingent of fans and the University of Hawaii, right? When it came to the end of the Todd Graham tenure, it was kind of vitriolic, right? People calling for the jobs of Todd Graham, of David Matlin, of David Lassner. And then I thought we had kind of moved on. Like it seemed like we were going to be in calmer waters where hire June, that seemed to be the odds-on consensus amongst the fan base, and move on, right? It made sense. Maybe he can hire guys like Timmy Chang, Brian Smith. Some of those guys can come back, work on his staff. You get Rich Miano in there. He's a guy who has a ton of connection. Like it seemed to add up, but it didn't. It didn't at all. And then Saturday at 1:00, Saturday afternoon, the University of Hawaii held a press conference where UH tried to basically counter the ongoing public discourse around the hiring process, mainly concerning June Jones. The only person at this press conference was UH spokesman Dan Meisenzahl. A lot of people familiar with him from his time in local news. The athletic director wasn't there. The president wasn't there. It was just a spokesperson for the University of Hawaii trying to counter this narrative and sort of offer an explanation of where the University of Hawaii was coming from in an attempt to counter that narrative that was out there. They basically also turned into like a criticism session of June Jones for the way he handled the process, as well as some of his past issues. And I think those issues in the eyes of the University of Hawaii, both during his tenure there and afterward in his other stops. And then like less than 4 hours later, Timmy Chang's announced as the head football coach. Like it went from, it was just absolutely insane. And it, no matter which way you look at it, if you're in the camp of, hey, the University of Hawaii did the right thing, June's not the right guy, or if you're fully in the camp of, hey, they're making an absolutely idiotic mistake by not hiring June Jones. Of course, the guy that I feel for the most in all of this is Timmy Chang. Like he just gets caught in the middle. He's got enough things working against him. And this whole hiring process, I think further sort of cuts his legs out from under him a little bit. But just the chaos, the insanity that surrounded last week, and then that last 24-hour period where it looked like June was interviewing, he was offered terms. It seemed like, all right, like this foregone conclusion. And then 24 hours later, Timmy Chang's announced, and the in-between is just not good.
No, Jordan, it was a circus. It was an absolute circus. I remember texting you like, dude, get on and watch this right
Yeah, I didn't
now.
even know it was happening.
Yes.
I didn't see it really on social media. I guess like the media list, I think probably got a note, like an email contacted by the sports information department or the athletic department. And so there were a lot of reporters on, but I didn't really know about it. And yeah, thanks to you, I joined like 10 minutes late. I happened to just be by my computer, but yeah, sorry, Hunter, go on. It was,
No, you're fine. And honestly, I didn't know about it either. My coworker, shout out to Glenn, um, was like, "Did you know this is happening?" And we watched it on his phone while we were at work. Um, and at first, I didn't know what was going on. First of all, at that point, we had heard that June had kind of, um, not accepted his offer, and then a couple other things from June Jones, came out about him not being able to, have a contract that would be conducive of winning. And I have to agree with, how are you going to sit in a room with uh, a high school student athlete with their parents right there, tell them that you care about them, that you're invested in the kid's future, but oh, by the way, my contract's up in about a year and a half from now, so I may not be around for when you're a junior and a senior. I completely agree with him. And even the way that he conducted himself in some of the things that he said, sure, some would say you didn't need to say all of that stuff, but we're talking about potentially one of the most legendary coaches in UH football history coming out and saying, he could have given me a longer contract. I even gave him permission. I don't know if this is true. We didn't have an earpiece, unfortunately, in the interaction between Dave Matlin and him when the contract was negotiated. But he did say, offer me a longer contract and fire me if you want to. I just need that as, if you will, a bargaining chip when I'm recruiting. I totally understand that. So, and then on top of that, even when the offer was made and, he didn't like it or whatever you have, for him to come back on top of it and say, I'm still interested, it shows that he's still wanting to be involved in the rebuilding process of Hawaii football. In my mind, that was a very humble statement. Very humble statement. As a former player, I love seeing a coach like that, especially in hindsight of everything we went through with TG, with Todd Graham, someone that we desperately wanted to own some of the stuff that was going on with the team, and he just ignored it. Just, oh, there's nothing wrong with the team. We're going on as normal. The transfer portal is just part of the landscape of Hawaii football. La di da di da. In my mind, the way that June handled this was up front. It was bringing some would say he should not have done that. He was bringing the community of Hawaii football together in what happened. And then UH just came back and said, sorry, we're gonna defend ourselves right here. We're gonna have a little bit of a social media public relations battle with June Jones. It just was so unprofessional, Jordan, so unprofessional. um Man, I can only, I have to look at this from the perspective of the current guys on the team right now who are still committed, that are still wanting to be a part of the future of Hawaii football right now. Their word is their bond. They gave their word to play for Hawaii football. They're still here. Man, like I just feel for those guys, because this is a tough environment to create a winning football team around, man. It just is. It so disappointing in my mind with the way that the school and the overall athletics program kind of handled this public relations battle that they did not need to stoop down to. They could have been above it. You don't see Alabama going through something like this. It was frustrating to watch.
yeah, it was very uncommon, I think, when you see these college football openings pop up across the country like that, you don't see something play out like this. And look, there aren't a lot of places where a former head coach who took the program to glory is asking back, right? Who wants
Yeah.
to come back. And so it is unique in that sense. I don't blame June Jones for answering questions in the media, right? Some of those were because he was asked. Some of them I think they put out there, unsolicited, but I don't see anything wrong with that, right?
And he
Lobbying
wasn't
for the
attacking.
job, like he wanted the job. Like, what is he supposed to sit back and sort of just wait and hope and not speak, and especially when given a platform? And yeah, maybe that's not fair to other candidates or something like that, but that's just the nature of the beast and the profile of the candidate when it comes down to that. And for the University of Hawaii, I just don't quite understand their PR strategy. And I don't have a public relations background. I don't profess to really how to operate. I haven't been in like a war room or something like that, or a situation room when it comes to things. I don't see, there hasn't been a clear path, right? I mean, even if you go back to the Todd Graham situation, and when, look, there was a loud vocal contingent of people who were raising serious issues and serious questions, I should say, about alleged issues within the program. And at that time, we got like some prepared statements from the athletic program and different, people in positions of power within the program. There was never a press conference held then to address, some of the comments being made out in the public, and some folks speaking out in the transfers, right? That was really the only time we saw some of that stuff. And Todd Graham did answer some questions leading up to the bowl game in regard to some of, the Twitter space thing and things like that. But there wasn't really a proactive approach to sort of doing that, right? Good or bad. I don't know if that was the right call or not. But then they kind of go the opposite here. Instead of just not saying much, they hold a press conference, right? And it was a spokesman for the university who ends up speaking at this press conference. And it isn't anybody in a position, a decision-making position. Like, it wasn't the athletic director, it wasn't the president, it wasn't the chair of the board of regents or anything like that. It was just a spokesperson. And so very different strategies. And maybe you can say, hey, they're trying to do things differently in terms of how they handled the Todd Graham situation and how they're handling, this latest sort of public relations issue that has come up or something like that. I just don't quite understand how they're really approaching this, and like what the reasoning is behind how they've approached it. It just kind of leaves me scratching my head a little bit, because at the end of the day, like if June Jones wasn't your guy, one, why go through the process of giving him an offer? And maybe they legitimately thought they could come to an agreement with June Jones. Maybe they legitimately thought, hey, look, if we can get June on our terms, that's a pretty good situation. Maybe that's the case. But if it wasn't, and obviously it wasn't, that's what we heard Friday night, and June is still publicly campaigning for it, that's fine. Like, if you're a university, move on, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to put the guy you're hiring, whether it was Timmy Chang in this case or somebody else, in the best situation going forward. And I think, whether going through the exercise at all with June Jones or just moving on after Friday, when you put out that statement that said, hey, yes, we made an offer, it was declined, and we're moving on. Like, you should have just left it at that, probably, as opposed to holding a press conference like hours before you hire the guy. And so that's why I just think for Timmy Chang, who's gonna face this monumental, gargantuan uphill test, right? The no stadium thing, the sheer number of transfers, the late thing, the COVID, right? Are they even gonna be allowed full capacity in the stadium come September?
The roster,
like all of those things already exist. And so why make it harder on? Like, like let's try not to put him in a situation where, it's like, well, there's all this controversy swirling around the program. It's like, just move on, right? Like, if that's the case, you feel like June wasn't your guy, like, just move on and hire the guy you want, hire the guy you think is the guy for the job. And in this case, it's Timmy Chang. And I think the good thing is, a lot of the folks, the public, the fans and things, they have thrown their support behind Timmy Chang. And I think the disappointment is almost 100% in not getting June Jones, as opposed to disappointed in the fact that they got Timmy Chang, right? That's not the disappointment at all for a lot of
I
folks.
agree.
It's just the fact that, hey, June Jones wanted the job. We could have had him, but we don't. But on the other hand, right, it's like, hey, look, Timmy's a June guy, played in that system, is part of one of the more successful eras in the University of Hawaii football. And so, hey, moving on, right? Like we got to be able to support this guy. It's just, will he bring the same pizzazz that June Jones would have? I don't know, right? He's never had a chance. I'm more than willing to say that we should all give him a chance.
Absolutely.
But it's just the way we ended up with the Timmy Chang hire. I just don't think was fair to him, right? And point the finger at whoever you will. I just think it could have been handled so much better in terms of putting him in the best position to jumpstart and dive right into this thing, because that's exactly what he's going to have to do.
Yeah, and I'm not a real big believer that athletic directors are supposed to be these celebrities that we like. I don't know. It's so interesting because Hawaii's so small that like something like this can be amplified to such a level. I think athletic directors hold a very significant and important role for the maintaining the structure, everything that goes into being an athletic director of a Division I program like UH. It's an important thing. I didn't think that they needed necessarily to make this June Jones versus David Matlin. It was just like this sideshow, and we're not really focused on the problem right here. Let's not even give it the attention that it deserves. Let's focus on getting a head coach right now, because National Signing Day is a week and a half away, boys. Let's not even give it the attention. If June Jones wants to say something, let him say something. We don't have to disclose anything that went on behind closed doors, because this was a job interview that, hey, just because he wants to talk about it doesn't mean we have to talk about it. It's supposed to be confidential. And you as an institution can ride that high horse if you so chose. And by doing that, conduct kind of a professional environment for all the perception that's out there from your student athletes, from your coaches, from your donors. Hey, I kind of appreciate their professionalism with all that. Yeah, June Jones had some things to say. We don't really know what all happened. Hawaii wasn't saying much about it. Instead, we swooped to the other side and they aired out all this dirty laundry. It's like, you didn't have to go there. You didn't have to go there, guys. You could have been above this and handled this with a little maturity and a little class. And yet now we're trying to pick up the pieces of our own demise, something that we created on our own, that we didn't have 2 weeks ago. And so, yeah, I agree. It's an uphill battle, and you're starting with the bottom of it covered in soap or something like that. Timmy's trying to get his feet under him as he's starting this thing. So I agree, Jordan. It makes it more difficult than it needed to be.
Yeah, it's just, everybody's got to start paddling in the right direction, or at least in the same direction. So this thing can start moving forward. And look, you can use the old adage that any sort of publicity is good publicity, right? Any sort of being in the news is good, even if it's negative. And I think the University of Hawaii's got to take that and run with it, right? And how do you sort of capitalize on all of the eyeballs who were streaming the press conference, who, tuned in to like Kurt Favela's Facebook Live thing Friday night after the news of June Jones declining the offer came in. Like, people are paying attention, maybe for the wrong reasons, but you've at least got a captive audience. And how do you now parlay that into support for Timmy Chang and the University of Hawaii football program is going to be a big deal. Any final thoughts sort of on this, Hunter? Obviously, we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks, as we now know who's got the job after we hear from Timmy Chang, AD Matlin, later this week in the press conference as well, that will have aired by the time this goes live on Thursday. We can talk about things next week, signing day coming up and all of that. But any final thoughts before we sort of head into the home stretch of this episode?
I think what went down shows as an institution, we've got a lot of work to do. If we're going to be the type of program and the type of school that is contending for Mountain West championships on a consistent basis, we have to conduct ourselves better. We have to be called to a higher standard. And that goes from top down, from athletic director to head coaches to position coaches to players. We need to be at a higher level than where we're at right now. The reaction from the athletic department to this is pretty telling to me, the state of Hawaii athletics in general, which is kind of disappointing when we're only a year and a half out from a national championship from the men's volleyball team, which was absolutely incredible. We've got a pretty bright future in front of us, in my opinion, for Hawaii athletics, but there's apparently a lot of work that needs to be, some groundwork that needs to be laid right now for the future to happen. And so, those are just some closing thoughts. I've got some, some hopes and some dreams and some plans on what that could do, but Jordan, you and I are very small pieces for that is the larger future of Hawaii athletics. But I don't know, man. It was kind of telling of where we're at as a whole.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we can all collectively be better when it comes down to it, and hopefully the folks that have a little more influence, have a little more sway, have a little more power, heed that as well. I don't think that's a bad way to go about it, right? A little, 3.5 weeks in, but New Year's resolutions, never too early or never too late to start, if you will, as this thing moves forward. We're going to have a lot more to talk about as we move throughout the off season. As you point out, Hunter, where signing days around the corner, spring football is really not that far off. And so the year-round, never-ending cycle that is college football is very much upon us for the University of Hawaii. It's really interesting to see, right, some of the folks commenting, some of the regulars commenting on our YouTube and Facebook videos. You had like our guy Al from VA, who doesn't always agree with us, but even he had sort of June Jones. He had June Jones as his projected dream wish list as head coach. Like he wanted a staff with June, Rich, Rolo and Mouse Davis, Timmy Chang, Stutz, Corey Batoon on defense, keeping Victor Santa Cruz and Abe Elamimian, bringing Chad Owens to coach the special teams. I was like, sign me up if we could get that. I think that's a little bit of an optimistic look at things. But you had guys, right, like guys like Kavika and Robert who have been loyal listeners of the program and just talking about like, hey, like, things are looking positive, like positive support, and we need that going forward. And I think sort of echoing some of your sentiments, Hunter, but that kind of closes the book on this episode. But a little overtime before we head out of here. That was one heck of a weekend of NFL playoff football. That's a little my overtime segment. 4 games decided on the final play. Like, I don't know what else you could want. That Chiefs-Bills game, my goodness. Also, the NFL overtime rules. Talk about be better. God, just change the thing. Like, it should be so much more like college, although college kind of ruined their thing with the 2-point conversion, like shootout, shoot off, I don't know, whatever, after the third overtime. But, man, like Josh Allen doesn't touch the ball. That is just malarkey. But, yeah, NFL playoff weekend.
Pure magic.
Even better. Magic.
Yeah. I mean, 10 years ago, if you would have said a team flipped the field and kicked a game tying field goal with 13 seconds left on the clock, even if they had 3 timeouts, is unbelievable. That's a miracle. Like they would have canonized it and called it, the miracle in Arrowhead or something like that. But we're almost conditioned to expect it with this high-powered, high-octane level of football that we're seeing. And, man, I was pulling for the Bills, man. I wanted to see them do it, especially with the way that they finished that game off. Unbelievable. But at the end of the day, anybody but the Packers, Jordan. That's my closing thought.
Robbie Gould, too. Robbie Gould, of all the guys to stick it to him. The old bear. Oh, man.
So
just
fun.
Incredible. Yeah, we can only hope the conference championship games are just as good, and I think it's pretty good matchups. We're getting a little spoiled. This probably means they're going to be blowouts, but we can only hope as we move forward. And as the world turns, the University of Hawaii football program might be a uneventful week, and I get it. They need recruits, they need commitments, and all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of folks around the program would take an uneventful, out of the news type of week for the University of Hawaii football team. But that does it for us. Again, for Hunter, I'm Jordan. Big mahalo to our guy Jaron as well on the controls. This has been another episode of Hawaii Football Now, presented by Xanthison. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan Helle, Hunters at All Around ATH. Be sure to drop a comment for us as well on the social media or YouTube and Facebook, where the episodes are posted as well. And a big mahalo to Spectrum Mobile, in addition to our buddies over at Xanthus. And we'll see you next week right here on HFN. Aloha, everybody.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.